in the room and on Zoom. I'm happy to see some faces that I know both on Zoom and in person, but I won't give any specific shout outs in case I forget people. So we're going to have a 2-hour session focused on the wonderful concept of parent advocacy and how we can take that forward. We'll start with speakers. We may or may not have a break depending on how long the speakers go on, but then we'll have time for a Q&A session, certainly before 1 o'clock. I've been asked by Diana that we will be recording, so if you don't want to have your face on the recording, please turn off your video now, and also permission to take this work. Without further ado, because I tend to waffle on, if I introduce the wonderful David Tobis, who's here today with us from America, from lovely California, which is why we've got more than suntan than I am. David has obviously done some seminal work in the US, particularly in New York, to really introduce and pioneer advocacy and show how it can work to the betterment and for the benefit of many families. Okay? Well, thank you. Is that where I should be looking at that?
Yes, but it is following you, so you can look.
I'm here. I've worked with big channels for years, and over 18 fourth role, and thrilled about the work that it's doing. Story of York City worked together starting in the 1990s to make dramatic changes in the child welfare system. That included reducing the number of children in foster care. That refers to out-of-home placements. Reducing the number of children in out-of-home placements, almost 50,000 in 1992 to fewer than 7,000 today. It's an extraordinary change. And I think it was primarily because of the pressure that parents and their allies. I'm going to begin by describing what the conditions were in New York before parents had a voice, before they had any role in driving their needs and what the system did. And then I want to talk about what parents did working with their allies, bring about change, what the impact of that was, and what were some of the significant changes. That activity of parent involvement, peer-to-peer level activists, change policy, how that spread to other items, and then what might be done here to have parents have a bigger voice and a bigger impact. So to begin.
Yes.
New York City in 1990 was one of the worst child welfare in the United States. 20 class action lawsuits that had been filed against the city because it had harmed children and families. Children were removed primarily because of poverty, not because of lack or abuse. 70% of the children who placed there because of when those could be made in their families, had supports been provided to them. It took an average of 4 years for children to leave care. It took 7 years for it to take place, even if the child entered care as an infant. And one of the worst problems was that if a child was found to have been abused or neglected, in 40% of cases, it was done. The child didn't get any support, family didn't get any help, and the child was not removed until some kind of crisis. Next slide, please. Parents began to organize, first time in history in New York, to be a collective force for change. Parents had worked together to improve other systems in developmental disabilities, in mental health services, education, even in conditional cash transfer programs, but never in child welfare. That's what began to happen in the 1990s in New York. I want to briefly describe what it was. A friend of mine inherited a considerable amount of money. The requirement of the will was that she give it away. And I had the good fortune for her to ask me to help her give it away. We created something called the Child Welfare Fund. We would ask people if you'd like a grant of $20,000 to $25,000. And generally, people said yes. And the funds were used to help parents have a voice, to play a role in policy development and in helping other parents. We believed we had been, or I had been, a civil rights organizer in Mississippi in the 1960s during the civil rights movement. We had the belief that people have a right to participate in the decisions that affect their lives. We operated the Child Welfare Fund on that. We developed a three-part strategy. The first part was to train parents to be peer advocates. The second was to help change how the child welfare community saw parents. Parents had been demonized. We wanted them to be seen in their full humanity. And third was to have parents work as community organizers to bring other parents together and to create a force for change. Next slide, please. The first part of the strategy was to train parents to be advocates. A parent advocate is a mother, though some fathers became parent advocates. They had been investigated by protective services or had a child removed. The parents changed in many ways. So some parents didn't need to change. They had children removed inappropriately for reasons of poverty. They needed child care, for example, and had a child removed instead. They participated in a 3-month training program, which had 3 parts. First part was classroom training. The parents learned how to be advocates, what the movements of the child welfare system were, the laws, the policy. They learned how to write their stories and tell their experiences and write their recommendations. The second part of the strategy training program was experiential. Parents work in child welfare agencies under the supervision of a parent advocate and under the supervision of a social worker. The third part of the strategy were parent support groups, where parents got together without social workers, where they could talk about their problems, their experiences, and share their situations and figure out how they could move forward and get the help that they need. Once parents were trained and to be hired and paid in various child welfare agencies. The person who runs the child welfare system in New York is called the commissioner. John Mattingly was the commissioner running the child welfare system in New York for 7 years, and he became a strong advocate of parent advocates. And I want to read this quote from him, if that sign can be removed, of what he said about parent advocates. Commissioner Mattingly said, "Everywhere you look in the city where we are doing our best work, where the best is happening, you find parent advocates around." Next slide. There was resistance initially. A lot of the social work community felt, we don't want parent advocates. They're going to be telling us what to do. They're going to second guess us. They're going to violate the confidentiality of the parents they're trying to help. They're going to re-experience their own trauma. In fact, they thought it was illegal for a parent who had been
identified as having abused or neglected a child to work in a child welfare agency. We got legal determination, perfectly legal for a parent, even who has been found to have abused a child, to become a parent advocate, to work in families' homes and in agencies. These concerns that social workers had was real, and in several cases, these problems developed, but we created safe forums where people could talk about the problems and deal with them. And basically, it turned out that when a parent advocate was present in a situation where a mother was about to lose custody of her child or had already lost custody of her child, having a parent advocate made the parent feel better and made the social worker feel better. That research was done by a researcher at Hunter School of Social Work named Maria Lowell-Yance. That's the citation. It documents that everybody feels better when a parent advocate is present. Next slide, please. The second part of the strategy was to try to change how the child welfare community saw parents. The stories that reached the press were the most extreme example of abuse or death, so that the general social work community and the general public saw parent advocates as these awful people, when in fact they're mostly poor mothers who love their children and struggling to have their children remain safely with them. We did several things to change how people saw parents who had been involved with child welfare. The first thing was to support a publication called Rise Magazine. It's written by parents, for parents, but it's also read by social workers. It has parents tell what their experience was and what recommendations they have for improving the system. I encourage you all to look at Rise Magazine. It's free, it's online, it comes out regularly. Each issue deals with a different aspect of the child welfare system. And the publication, the website, risemagazine.org, has many, many resources. It also provides training for parents who want to become peer advocates or activists. We also supported a publication called Represent Magazine, which is also free online at representmag.org. It's a publication written by young people in foster care, telling their stories and what they think should be done to make it a more equitable and supportive system. The second part of what we did to try to change how parents were seen was we gave cash awards in public ceremonies to mothers or fathers who had worked hard to have their children reunited with them. We gave $1,000 cash grants to perhaps a dozen mothers each year in public ceremonies, and people began to see that parents want to be with their children. They just need more support. We gave awards to young people in foster care who helped others, and we gave awards to social workers who worked above and beyond the call of duty to help parents reunite with their children. All this activity created an environment where the social work community had contact with parents in other capacities than as clients. They had contact with parents as experts in their own lives and experts in what could be done to improve the system. There's a principle in sociology that contact reduces prejudice, and that's what happened in the child welfare system. Social workers had contact with parents as experts, not just as clients. Next, please. The third part of the strategy was to train parents to be activists, to organize other parents to become a countervailing force to push the system to change. Governments only change unless they're pushed to do what's convenient for them. They need an outside force to push them. And that's what we did. We supported parents to push government to make change. We created and supported organizations that were led by parents. There were dozens of organizations that sprang up, organizing different communities. There were separate organizations in Harlem and among Latinos, in different boroughs, and all these work together at different places, pushing the system. This activity created this countervailing force that made a tremendous difference. Next slide, please. I want to describe what all this activity led to, the kinds of changes that were made. As I mentioned before, in 1992, there were almost 50,000 children in foster care in New York City. In a city of 8 million people, there were almost 50,000 children in foster care. A child was taken from its family every 45 minutes. It was a staggering time. One of the reasons there was this high placement rate is perhaps some of you remember Rudolph Giuliani, who was a big friend of Donald Trump. Well, he was the mayor at the time and appointed a commissioner, Nicholas Scopetta, who had a policy: if there's any doubt, a child should be removed from harm's way. And that led to this enormous number of children in out-of-home care. Since then, it took 20 years, but the number of children in care has dropped from almost 50,000 to fewer than 7,000 today. And it's remained that low for the last 5 or 6 years. There was one time when several children were killed who were known to the system, and that caused a temporary increase. But the changes that have been implemented have been institutionalized. The number continued to drop, and it's remained this low from almost 50,000 to fewer than 7,000 today. The second significant change is that parents, when they were about to have their child taken away, had terrible legal representation. They were represented by a lawyer who had no experience, no special training in child welfare, had no backup support, so they couldn't investigate from the perspective of the parent. And the worst aspect was that when the lawyer met the parent the day of the legal proceeding, so there was almost no opportunity to present the perspective of the parent. And in almost every situation, the parent lost custody of the child. Today, the government supports what are called interdisciplinary legal teams, where a lawyer who's specially trained in child welfare, a social worker, and a trained parent advocate represent the parent who's at risk of losing a child. As a result, far fewer children are coming into care, and children remain in care shorter periods of time. This model of interdisciplinary legal representation was evaluated by a guy named Lucas Garber and found that it reduces the length of time children remain in care by 4 months, saving the city $50 million a year. So the parents are happy they've been able to keep their kids or get their kids back more quickly, and the city saves $50 million. So that has encouraged the city to continue to provide this exemplary legal representation. The third significant change is when children were remained with their families and didn't go into care, families got more support. There was more daycare provided, more counseling, more other kinds of support. There were certain supports that were not provided that still are a deficit in the system. There's not enough mental health services. There's not enough programs specifically for substance abuse for mothers, and there's not enough housing. A high percentage of children come into foster care from the homeless shelter system. It's a terrible system that's been set up. The fourth major change is that parents now have a significant voice in the system. We have what are called initial child safety conferences, which is the decision-making point where when a child is at risk, the social worker, the parent, other members of the community come together to decide, can this child remain safely at home? We began with a pilot project to have a trained parent advocate at those initial child safety conferences to make sure the voice of the parent gets heard, and that if a safety plan can be developed so the child stays home, it will be developed. We pilot tested this. It was successful. Every child safety conference now has a parent advocate present. Last year, there were 10,000 initial child safety conferences at which a parent advocate was present, or somebody from the same community as the parent was trained as an advocate. In London, for example, you have local authorities, I think 30 or 32. In New York, there's one administrative unit that deals with the entire system. The child welfare system in New York is enormous. It's a $2 billion industry. One of the other things that developed is that in New York, all foster care and preventive services are contracted out. When people saw the value of having a parent advocate present, the city decided to require in its contracts that every foster care agency would hire parent advocates in proportion to the number of children in its program to help parents work with families to be reunited. Now, every foster care agency has a parent, at least one parent advocate hired. There was an advisory panel set up by the commissioner to get the opinions of parents for new policies he was developing. Unfortunately, these advisory panels tend to be more tokenistic than really powerful. The federal government has required that every state has an advisory panel of parents with lived child welfare experience. Generally, these are tokenism. They're not real places where the voice of parents have significant influence. This is a picture, maybe hard to see, but parents speak in schools of social work and in law schools. This is at New York Law School, where they tell their experience to help train the next generation of social workers and lawyers to be sensitive to and aware of the perspective of parents. And parents write for Rise Magazine. Next, please. There's been a lot of documentation of benefits of parent advocacy, of parents working as advocates to help in other parents. Children remain in care for shorter periods of time. Fewer children come into care. Parents and social workers feel better about the experience, and all this reduction in the number of kids in care saves government money. It's a win-win situation. It takes a while to convince government that this is a better approach, but there's lots of documentation which has all been pulled together in a publication called the International Review of Parent Advocacy in Child Welfare. It's free, available online. If you Google International Review of Parent Advocacy in Child Welfare, all the research documentation of the impact of parent advocacy will be there. Next, please. In addition to all these changes and all this good news about what role parents play now in the system, it is still a problematic, punitive system. The structure of the system has not changed. Child welfare in New York and throughout the United States, and I believe in the UK too, it's a punitive system. Mothers are blamed for social problems, for unemployment, for racism. We direct our blame at the victim and blame mothers. And that's the child welfare system does that. It's a residual system. In New York, you really don't get help as a family unless your child is at risk of abuse or has been abused.
Same here.
It's underfunded. There's not enough support for families. And it's as much as it is a system of child protection, child welfare is a system of social control. And by that, I want to give an example. If you look at who is investigated in 1 year, it's about 1 to 2% of the population. But if you look at who's investigated over the course of the lifetime of a child till a child turns 18, one study has documented that 53%, more than half of all Black families, are investigated for abuse and neglect. This is massive intrusion into the homes of poor families. And a very low percentage of these families are found to have been abused or neglected. Among white families, it's 37% of all families, by the time a child turns 18, have been investigated. And one of the other things that happened in New York is the number of children in foster care decreased from almost 50,000 to 7,000. What increased were what's called court-mandated home supervision, where the judge orders a social worker to periodically, for as many as a year or two, visit the family to make sure everything is okay. Again, this is massive intrusion into families' homes. The most progressive forces in the United States have stopped calling it the child welfare system, but call it the family policing system. Next slide. This activity in New York really began as a cultural practice among the Maori in New Zealand. The Maori had a cultural history of what they called family group conferences. When a family was at risk, members of the community, religious leaders, family, relatives would get together to figure out how a child could remain safely at home, what kinds of support were available. And if a child had to be removed, who from the community could take the child rather than have it with strangers. This model of family group conferencing was enshrined in law in New Zealand in 1989. And when that happened, the concept spread to other high-income countries. There are now over 100 peer-to-peer support programs in high-income countries in at least these 9 countries, in Australia, Canada, England, Finland, Norway, Scotland, Wales, and the United States. A new program is about to be established in Northern Ireland. And I want to just quickly give a few examples of the kinds of programs that have developed in other countries. Australia, in Queensland, the Minister of Children, Youth, and Women created an advisory panel and that of parents, and that panel produced a Parents' Bill of Rights. There's no law behind the Bill of Rights. There's no funding for the Bill of Rights. There's no sanctions or incentives, but it's at least the first step so that parents, for the first time, have some aspirational rights in child welfare. Finland has a program called Dandelion, where parents who have been through the system primarily don't help other parents, but they train social workers to learn the perspective of parents. England, my understanding is that there are now 8 to 10 local authorities that have trained parent advocates working in the local authority. On Monday, several of us spoke at the Telford a local authority. It's extremely exciting what's happened there. They've trained parent advocates who are helping others and who are involved in policy advocacy. It was palpable how the culture in that local authority has changed. England also not only has peer-to-peer support, but it has this great organization, PFAN. And PFAN does training, it has webinars, it participates in some campaigns to improve the system. You are a model for what other countries should have. Very few other countries have such effective networks. Australia has a network called the Family Inclusion Network. New York and the United States has a network called the Birth Parents National Network. But I think PFAN is one of the most effective and strongest. There's a group of in Canada, in Manitoba, there's a group called Fearless R2W of mothers and grandmothers of Indigenous people who are working to change the child welfare system. It's an extremely racist system among Indigenous people, whereas 7 or 8 or 9% of the population is Indigenous, 50, 60, and 70% of the children in care are Indigenous. This group works to help individual families and to get housing for people, not just individuals, but to get to change laws so that more housing is available. Compared to what existed 30 years ago, it's extraordinary how much change has happened. But parent advocates who are trained only exist in a few countries, and in those countries in small pockets, and within those pockets only a few parents actually get the help of a parent advocate. We have a long way to go. Last slide, please. Or next to the last slide. To me, what's made the difference in New York is the role of parents working with their allies, with social workers, with lawyers, with foundation officers, and with government officials. There have been other reform efforts in New York, other infusions of money, other lawsuits, but the changes never lasted as long or were as deep until this time. And I believe it's because there was this countervailing force of parents organizing with their allies to push for change. I want to read a quote from Commissioner Bell, head of the child welfare system in New York, before Commissioner Mattingly, that other quote I read. Commissioner Bell, speaking to a group of parents from the Child Welfare Fund that I mentioned earlier, said this: New York City child welfare system has fundamentally changed over the last several years because you parents have forced us to change, because you have said openly and loudly, things cannot continue to go the way they are going, and we listen to that. That, I think, is the key message. You need to push government. Final slide, please. And what is needed now is, in many countries, there's peer-to-peer support, parents helping other parents. It's extremely important. But what's even more important is parents working as activists to change policy. You need to have the system change, not just help individuals. There are lots of resources available to help in that work. Rise magazine, I described. PFAN has lots of courses and webinars. The International Parent Advocacy Network has produced a toolkit that talks about how to create a parent advocacy program, what can be done to have a parent-led organization. Need also to evaluate these programs. I think one of the reasons that parent had such a big impact on it is that evaluations various aspects of parent involvement. Martin Luther King said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We, parents and allies, need to work together, bend that arc towards justice. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, David. We'll have time questions after our other speakers. Just a quick shout out, because I'm quite hard of hearing. If anyone can mute their microphone on Zoom, because there's some quite weird noises coming through, which is sort of a bit disturbing, but that's okay. Thanks for shouting out PFAN, David. We remain quite small though, so sort of people who want to come and join, please do. Really powerful story and evidence that what parent advocacy can do. I just wanted to sort of highlight, I guess, because sort of I do research, you know, there are over 80,000 children looked after in England, which is a ridiculous number. Over 7,000 in Wales, where I live, one of the highest rates in Europe. So there's lots of change that's needed. Still remain many issues, and you'll come on to this, Nikki, about independent legal representation when it reaches care proceedings. And that families still, David, find our system as punitive, brutal and dehumanizing, much like you were saying in New York, a system that unfortunately combines support with coercive control, which really does need to change. Our next session will be lovely, because I'm going to get introduced by a wonderful young child on the corner there, which is sort of like one of those television programs. So I've got to try and style it out, Dave, which is great. Just to introduce the wonderful Tammy and Nikki, who are both parent advocates, and we're just going to have a chat about your experiences and what you can share with people in the room and online. Tammy, if I can come to you first, if you could just introduce yourself and maybe just a little bit about your experience and why you came to parent advocacy.
My name's Tammy. Yeah, I've been training for like, I trained for like 8 weeks, but in the COVID it was like went longer. Yeah, I've become a parent advocate because it inspired me from my social worker. So from my own previous, experience, she gave me that inspiration to do good and and proceed basically. So it was her what gave me that that push. Yeah, so it wasn't just that that I think it was just that she was like, yeah, you can do it, I want you to do it, just go ahead and do it, and that's it.
Amazing what people can do when people have belief in them.
100%, and she was the best social worker ever.
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. And that's a lovely example, Tammy, that there remain some really good social workers.
No, you do get some good social workers, you know what I mean? So, and when they believe in you, then that inspires you even more. I mean, so yeah.
Thanks so much, Tammy. Nikki, you're
Same sort of thing.
okay.
I had a social worker and she said something to me and I was just like, she believed in me and thought, you know what, you're doing amazing with 5 kids. And you can do it on your own. And yeah, and she said to me, do you want to be a parent advocate? I said, yeah, definitely. Because I had a parent advocate and it worked great. Yeah. So that was from Bernardo's, but yeah.
Okay, was there anything sort of on an individual level, Nikki, that took you into parent advocacy? Was there any sort of drive within you?
Well, when I had my parent advocate, it was domestic violence, and my ex-husband didn't want to go to the case conference, and it wasn't child in need, it was a child protection plan, and we had a parent advocate, but I thought in these meetings it's confidential, but within 5 minutes of us leaving this call, leaving the room, my ex-husband was on the phone telling me, I won't swear.
It's okay.
Calling me all the names under the sun, and obviously he never came back and did the parent advocacy again with us. I had to do it on my own, and I just thought I want to help other people, especially with domestic violence. I'm just thinking, not just the woman, because it's men as well. But I just want to be a voice for the women because some of them are so scared. Yeah.
It's a great point. Yeah, and it's important to say, isn't it, that domestic violence and abuse is still mainly from men to women. And I think there's research out there that says it's sort of in 60 to 70% of child protection cases. So that's kind of quite concerning.
Misuse and drug abuse and yeah.
Nikki, what's what's important about parent advocacy to you, and how do you think it differs from a professional advocate?
Because we've been through the system, and I don't know about what you do, but I was meeting the people beforehand. So quite a while beforehand, and speaking to them. I'd go to their house, or if they don't want to go to house, look, if you don't want to come to your house, you can come and have a coffee. We go and meet somewhere. It was sometimes I was doing court work, and other times it was doing in the case conferences, and I went and spoke to them, and I said to them, if you're going to swear at me now. Do everything you want to say. Don't do it in the room, because like it doesn't look great. But yeah, but going through the court system is totally different experience. And I just think when you was talking about like social workers need time, and they need to refer people for other agencies to turn around and say, not a 12-week parenting course, because a lot of the people have been in care themselves. They haven't had that structure how to be a parent. So they're learning from things, and they turn around and say, you've got a 12-week parenting course. What's that going to teach you? You should go in there for a year. As you tell me, I know it's like different, but go in there for how long it takes them to be able to be a parent. It's just time, and
I guess you can give people more
Yeah.
time, perhaps, isn't it?
Yeah.
Than social workers can.
definitely.
Tell me, can I come to you saying something? What you know, because what makes you special as a peer-to-peer parent advocate?
So what I do is that when I get like a referral or anything, I'll like phone my client. I get to know them first, and I don't go by the report. I just let them lash out on me, just they explode, of course.
Yeah.
So we get that communication there going. Do you know what I mean? Get that understanding of each other, and then like after they've done like about an hour on the phone, and then I say, okay, no problem, cool down. Do you know what I mean? Have a think about what we've been talking about. Then the next step is that I'll come as a bit of a more humble, and I'll say, right, what do you want me to do? How can I help you? Do you know what I'm saying? So then they understand there's like, boundaries as well. Do you know what I mean? So I'll tell them on the second, like, this is the boundaries, this is the situation, data protection, you know what I mean? It's safeguarding concerns. I have to tell them that. Do you know what I mean? So I just let them get out of everything out their head first, and then put the ground rules down and say, look, whatever we talk about is between me and you, but except from safeguarding issues, then, you know what I mean? I have to report it. And then they could just be normal with me. And I think that's when you get that connection with the parent, because you're not judging them. Do you know what I'm saying? You're not judging them like what she says, like, go for a coffee, you can ask them to go like place to the park, you know what I mean? You can feel comfortable, you know what I mean? So we're not like going to the houses, because I think some people like feel intimidated when you go to the houses, because as a professional, do you know what I mean? Because we get it from the social workers, we get it from the, whoever. So I'm like, yeah, come, let's go park, let's go and do this with the kids and that. So we feel interaction, you know what I mean? So, and they appreciate it. They actually appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma. It's really interesting. It's both of you have raised big thing in child protection of emotion, isn't it?
Yeah,
That actually it's a really terrifying
Well, I've gone
experience.
through my experience of child protection. I didn't know nothing about child protection, and it was the most scariest time in my life. In my back of my head, I'm gonna get my kids taken away. My kids are taken away. That's it. I ain't gonna see my kids. No one gave me like a thingy beforehand. They just, my social worker went, get ready for child protection. Didn't have no letter. Didn't have no time to thingy. Didn't even get a chance to even have an advocate. Do you know what I mean? And then when I did get an advocate, the advocate couldn't attend because she didn't know all the details, and everything was just, and I was there on my own. But luckily, I had a good social worker. So I raised my hands to that social worker. She was amazing. Yeah, she's no longer with us anymore. Like, she's gone to another job, but she's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
No, and it's nice.
And she believed in me. So she put me down to children in need. And then after that, she said, yeah, if you don't want to continue with it, then we're finished. And she relieved me so much.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
did you want to add anything, Nikki, about emotions? Because sort of as a social work academic, I'm constantly saddened that social work's so frightening for families. Anything you wanted to say on that?
Well, yeah, because like sometimes when they go up and do the I'm a people person. So when I go and see people, I don't have nothing like I see a lot of social workers come up with their clipboards and things like that, and I'm thinking, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Because like, especially if you live on a council estate, they go, social services, or that's this, or that's that. So to go in there a positive, I know there's a reason why you're going into that place. You have to offer, and I'm not being funny, you have to offer that if you've got teenage boys and kids and girls, or all of them, you have to support all the family. And like my social worker was fantastic, because she used to take one child out a week.
Brilliant.
All of them.
That's good.
And take them out and did what they wanted to do and things like that. You need to do it as a family and give them time. But sometimes obviously that ain't gonna happen. But that's when you have the assessment done, right? Obviously it's totally different when you get your social worker, but please just be kind, and
I think
you
it's
know
got to be
that
mindful,
it's-
innit? You
it's
just got to be
really-
mindful, like, you know what I mean, like of the parents, like, you know, like coming back to like mental health and all that stuff, you know, it's like, you know, certain mums have got mental health, some
Yeah.
mums have got anxiety, some people can't go out, some people can't talk on the phone. So social workers have got to understand that, you know, if you do turn up at someone's house, they're going to get anxiety.
Yeah.
They're not going to open that door. It's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't feel, they can't physically open that door because they get anxiety. Like, you've got to take that into consideration that, you know, they are mums and they're doing a fantastic job, but sometimes it gets hard. And we got to understand that as professionals, that we just got to take time. We've got to have that step back and say, we're human as well. You know what I'm saying? We're human as well. We're parent as well. We're going through this challenging, like, you know, things. But social workers think it's like a negative thing. Like when the parent asks us for help, it's that we get, you know, in our face again. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I feel anyway. If I ask for help, I'm thinking that maybe I shouldn't have asked for that help. Do you know what I'm saying? That's how I was getting. Do you know what I mean? You ask for it and then it gets thrown back in your face.
Or it gets
You know what
ignored.
I'm saying? Or it gets ignored.
And then
do you
it
know what I mean?
gets worse.
Yeah.
And then they help
Yeah.
you. And then,
Yeah,
but I'm
then-
thinking,
Yeah.
when you ask for the help, why can't you just have
Yeah.
somebody come in and say, right, what do you
want?
need?
Yeah. Yeah.
Before it gets that bad.
Do you think parent advocates can help? with
Yeah,
that?
we,
Yeah.
100%, because we have a different relationship, because we're not the social worker, we're mums, we're parents, you know what I mean? We have that communication there, do you know what I mean? Like to a mum, we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But with a social worker, they have that boundary. They can't get too emotional, they can't get too attached, you know what I'm saying? So I think they get a bit more, you know, a little bit more friendly, get to know them a bit more, then the parents will be a bit more open. Do you know what I'm saying? They will be a bit more open with them. That's what I think.
And also as well, you know, like you can offer like advocacy, parent advocacies know about charities and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there thinking, well, if I know that, why do you not know that? Why is the social worker not telling this person about this charity to help them?
Yeah, that's a good point. On the flip side, Nikki and Tammy, how do you, because when I speak to Tammy and Talia at PFAN, they give a lot of examples of how they help social workers as well. Is there anything you wanted to say about how you can?
I think that, you know, like as a parent advocate, we can help social workers. We can give them feedback to say, you know what, mum don't want you to put things in the reports. Mum don't want you to bring up certain things. Mum don't want you to, like, you know, keep repeating that she's got mental health and, do you know what I mean? And accusing her of mental health, or do you know what I mean? That, you know, because that puts a bad thing in the mum's head as well, to say, you know, they're pretending that I've got mental health now, and they put, you know, they judge me for this, you know what I mean? So I think that, you know, certain things shouldn't be put in reports as well, because it's too long and mums don't really want to hear certain things about themselves, because I've gone through that and I don't want to be like, you know, reading through 25 pages of reports. Well, it's not even relevant to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like from past history. I know there's certain things you've got to put in, but it just goes on and on and on. And it don't get to the point. It really don't get to the point. I think it should be shorter and just less things about the mum, because we get penalised as mums as it is. It's just like literally the mum's done this, the mum's done that, the mum's done this, you know what I'm saying? And it's totally wrong.
When that mum might have lots of aspirations
Yeah.
for her child. And
Yeah.
lots of
Do you know what I mean?
steps
She's
as
doing
well.
everything like what she needs to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, say for instance, like, you know, the mum's forgot to get the immunisations. Oh, why haven't you done that immunisation? Why should we get penalised for that? Maybe the
It's a
child was
choice.
sick. Maybe, and it's a choice. Maybe she didn't want to vaccinate her child. So we have to be thingy, like, you know, mindful, and social needs to be about that as well. that if they don't want to vaccinate their child, they should have to. And if they don't want to go to get their teeth done at a certain time, they don't have to. You know what I mean? We should make a choice.
What about you, Nick? What do you think you sort of add to social work? Does that make sense? How do you make their lives a bit easier?
And turn around and say like when you've got no poverty, doesn't necessarily mean you're neglecting your kids,
100%.
right? And it is I'm sorry, I don't care what you say, right? And I'm a parent advocate, but it is a class system because I've done parent advocacy and they've had children that have got in a white middle class thingy, they're white middle class. I did 3 of them and every one of them did not go on a plan. I can swear that on my Tommy's grave, right? And what you came around and said about the black people as well. That's true. Because I had a person, this is what I'm just saying this, right? I had a person, this young girl in where I used to live in New Cross, there was a boy that got stabbed, right? There was another boy got shot within 2 minutes of each other, right? And in the estate, right? Social services, because this person was in school with this boy, she had a child. And when I spoke to this young girl, because her dad was in a gang when he was 20, right, and he's been to prison, come out, and he I think that saved him because now he works with youth offenders and things like this. But they didn't know about that. They just thought because she's in a gang and she's worried about this sort of thing. And that these in New Cross and Lewisham, this affected everybody. These 2 young people being stabbed. And I'm sorry, I'm saying it. Anna Gupta knew this because she went, this young. And so she didn't go on she went on a child in need plan. No, actually, no, she did go on she didn't go on a child protection, she went on a child in need plan. But you need to know the circumstances behind it, because not all of it could be historical things. Like this is what I was saying about a lot of it is historical and beyond the thing. If they've got no money, so what? Give them the money.
Yeah, it would be sensible, wouldn't it?
I went to court and they would not give this couple a weekly travel card. So every single day they had to finish court, they had to ring this thingy to get a travel warrant for the next day. Oh, we didn't want to give it to them because they didn't want it to go other places. And they're going to court.
Yeah.
They would get there.
Look, I think you're right, Nikki. The research is very clear, and you, Tammy, that in social work we intervene in poorer areas, particularly with poorer mothers. That's very much like David was saying. It is very much a class system in the UK. Nikki and Tammy, sort of thinking, David explained quite clearly about how important it was for the organisation of New York to support parent advocates. Can I come to you first, Nikki, about your experience of support or not? I think it's really important to tease this out, support or not from the local authority where you were or have been acting as a parent advocate.
Okay. There was 5 of us that started.
Which local authority is this?
Lewisham. It was Lewisham when I lived in Lewisham. I did the last family court I did. I've been there for it was a couple of weeks. And then I supported them. And then on the Friday, the judge turned around and said, they're going to give the final decision on Monday. Okay. And then gets a phone call from Lewisham Social Services. And they turned around and said, right, Nikki, you don't have to go on Monday. Your job's done. And I was like, why? She went, because we're worried about you having secondary trauma and they might get violent and things like that. I went, well, first of all, they are going to be angry because I've heard all this thingy and I said, they're losing their kids. Right? I know they haven't seen, I said, they're losing their kids, right? I went, they're not going to be angry at me. I said, I've been there every single day. I'm bringing them at 7 o'clock in the morning. Have you got your kids ready? Have you got the kids to school? Have you woken up? Have you done this? I've met them at the train station. I've gone out for a fag. If they're having a shitty day, they're going out for a fag, sorry. And then they turn around. I said, I'm going in Friday on Monday and I don't need to be paid. They lost their children. The judge gave a decision. She lost their children to long-term foster care. He was kicking, punching. She was screaming. We walked outside and I said, look, let's go down for a fag. And they went, yeah, that's it, 'cause I don't want to be in here and blah, blah, blah. And we get to the lift and they went, can you go down the stairs? I went, no, it's 7 floors up. I'm not walking 7 floors down. Come on, let's go downstairs. And as I got into the lift, everything, it just went all calm and they went, thank you for being here. And I was just like, that's all I needed. Didn't need anything else. And I never got a phone call to find out how it was, nothing. And then when I left, then I was like really emotional and things like that. And I come home and I kiss my kids but yeah.
And one, I suppose, a really positive from that family, but you needed support from the organisation,
Yeah.
wasn't there?
Oh.
Tammy, I understand you've had a sort of perhaps a better experience as in the organisation you're working with, and perhaps been more empathetic. And
Yeah, it's been good.
did you want to share a bit about why it's been good or how it's been
It's
good?
just like, the experiences, what I've gone through and, being through it yourself and then helping other parents go through it. It's just like, just really inspires you to help more. Do you know what I mean? I get a couple of cases at a time, do you know what I mean? But it's mostly over the phone, they want support from the phone calls and that's really good. You know what I mean? Sometimes they don't want to meet and that. So I'm fine with that. Do you know what I mean? So I just give them a little call, give them a little text. They're like, yeah, you right, girl, how you doing? Do you know what I mean? So it's you just be normal with them, innit? You right, how you good, as kids? And, so it just inspires you to work more and to be more, just to help them, innit? So they feel that, they can trust you, you know what I mean? They can trust you. You can't really, text a social worker, say, oh, you right, girl, are you? You know what I mean? You can't do that. Do you know? People might think you're a bit weird. But, with me, it's yeah, it's good, so.
And Tammy, in terms of the sort of local authority, do they've given you training?
Yeah,
they offer
everything,
you
yeah,
regular
everything,
support?
yeah, regular support, we get back, we come together every 4 weeks and that, and my manager's quite good, so can phone up anytime. I mean, she's always there for me. Yeah, lovely.
It's amazing.
So just sort of one last question from me, but then do share anything else that you want. I think it's really important, isn't it, to try and show Nikki and Tammy that parent advocacy can involve challenging parents as well. Because I think that's really.
Yeah.
Did you
100%.
either of you want to say anything more about that?
I think that I think just one of my parents was just a little bit needy about certain things and what I couldn't advise her about, so my role is just child protection or safeguarding. So when she's asking about other things, I have to go a little bit quiet and say, look, I can't give you any information about that. I can't I can't advocate for you that. You know what I mean? That's not my role. You know what I mean? It's mostly the child protection and safeguarding I can support you with, but other things I can't. And then they do get a little bit weird with you, but then you're thinking, it's like I say, it's okay, innit? I can get you another number and I can give you alternative information, but I can't give that to you because I'm not trained. So, and then they're like, oh, okay, no problem. I'm so sorry. And so, yeah. So you just have to help them, innit? If you can't provide it, you just have to help them with another alternative.
Different option.
Yeah.
Did you want to, because I know when I speak to Tammy and particularly Talia, they sort of say, well, actually, part of their role is being very honest with parents, as in if there is a problem, perhaps they're in a better position than a social worker to say, perhaps that does need to change. Did you want to give any examples or ideas of where that parent advocacy can involve saying to families, actually, perhaps there is a bit of a problem and we need to work together to address that? You don't have to.
Yeah. There's so many. It's gone out of my head. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We can come back to it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Was there anything either of you wanted to add that I haven't asked about in terms of your experiences or your hopes for parent advocacy?
I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I think that, you know, loads of local authorities should do it and, you know, try it out. That because, you know, if you like, you know, like I've got plenty of friends and family, and they're like, yeah, like we need it. Do you know what I mean? We need it, but we're in a different community, so I think it will help a lot of families to, you know, to get access to it and to have it for like straight away, like what you're saying, like straight away from the first get go, like, you know, not like halfway through assessment. I think they should do it like as soon as they get a referral to get an advocate, because it makes a big difference. 100%.
We had a meeting with the chair people, and they turned around and said that everyone, you could tell the people that had an advocate with them, because they were calm, they was ready to listen, they'd got all their anger out. Sometimes you had to kick them under the table, but yeah. And I think everyone should be exactly the same. Everybody should have one. As soon as you get the referral, there's your advocate.
100%.
And who then sticks with you,
Yeah.
however
All
long
day
that
through,
journey
yeah,
is.
all day through until as long as they want you. You know,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
the
even after child protection, and do you know what I mean? Like you just to work, like have a little catch up. You know,
Yeah.
how are you? You good? How's the family? Do you know what I mean? That little support after will help them a long way as well.
Because often families experience a lot of change, don't they? So I
Yeah,
think
100%.
having that continuity of one person.
Yeah,
can really-
yeah, just to give them that little peace of mind, innit? That you know you've done well. You've got you know,
Exactly.
you got your kids still. You know, we've done amazing work together, and you know what I mean. It just helps them. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't really get that with social workers. Once social workers leave you, they're like, yeah, bye, gone. Do you know what I mean? You don't get no feedback really. Do you know what I mean? You don't really get that. You know, but I think that, you know, with an advocate, we can give that a bit more sympathetic, you know, like feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you done well, you know, mum, like you done
Exactly.
excellent. Do you know what I mean? So it just gives that extra warm feeling to the mum, because, you know, because the mum will need it more. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we all need to be praised, don't we?
100%, 100%, yeah.
And also, I mean, like you're on a different thing, but even if the children lose their children,
Yeah.
right? And I did carry on supporting that family. I don't care. I did it with her. That's it. And they needed that support. But sometimes you sit there and go, so they've lost their children. So what support is the mum going to get or the dad going to get? And they say, nothing, not from us. And that is bad.
Yeah.
I can't accept that. I know they're the children's social workers, but they should be for the family, the whole family.
You know, I agree. You know, I obsessed at the moment of changing children in need to families in need, because that's what it's about. And there's research out there, Nikki, without being too much of an academic, which shows repeat care proceedings, particularly for mothers, where issues aren't addressed. And some mothers, I think, in the research had sort of 6 or 7 children removed, which is completely brutal. Diana, we've got my budgie and PFAM mate on Tammy. Is Tammy still there? I know she was at a hospital appointment this morning.
She is.
Are
Yeah.
you there, Tammy?
Hi, Simon.
Hey, Tammy. It would have been nice to have you in person, but lovely to see you online as well.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, yeah. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm loving the professional headpiece. That's awesome. Tammy,
Well, I'm
first,
sat by my daughter's hospital bed, so I'm trying to be as quiet as I can.
Tammy, can we just get a little something from you about what we're doing at PFAN, and perhaps your experiences of being a parent advocate as well?
Of course. So, what we do at PFAN is a lot of people think that we are trained advocates. We're not. We don't have a capacity to do it as an organisation. But I am a parent advocate in my own right. I'm not trained. I'm only trained with the knowledge that I've learned from social workers that I've speak to, that I am friends with, because there is some good social workers out there. And also what I find out from legal websites and stuff, and my own experience. But we want to promote parent advocacy because we believe that parents need to have someone with them when they go through social services, because it's always so biased on the side of a parent. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. I thought the doctor was coming. We want to make it mandatory that everyone gets a parent advocate, because a parent shouldn't go through child protection on their own. A parent shouldn't go through child in need on their own. Simple as. And one of the things we do at PFAN is we do research. Well, we started doing research, but we do campaigns, we hold webinars, and last year we trained Ireland. So Ireland now have parent advocates, and in PFAN we have got the UK, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So we've got all 4 continents now in PFAN, all with some sort of parent advocacy, some more advanced than others, some not. So we helped Ireland set up theirs, and they've just shot forward. The amazing work they're already doing within 6 months of even starting knowing about parent advocacy. Once a month, I hold a space, which me and Simon first started 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 3 years, something like that, lost count, where parents and social workers come together once a month. To be fair, it was supposed to be today's meeting, but I'm actually in the hospital, so I couldn't do it today anyway. And we have conversations, and it's a safe space for social workers and parents. It's not just for parents or social workers, it's about building relationships. You have to have a relationship. You can't not have relationships. And then there's the language as well. So if anyone wants any information about it, is just email one of us from PFAN and we can give you the information. We do different topics, and they can be about poverty, but sometimes we also just talk. So someone could be having a problem, and someone that's more established in parent advocacy will help that person because they've already gone through it. And so then they can help. And we've got some that have been coming for 3 years. We've got some that have just started 2 months ago and keep coming back. We've got about 6 local authorities. We got about 6 local authorities that come to that meeting, which is really good. And at first it wasn't very, it wasn't widely known and not many people got turned up, but we just persevered. Unfortunately, Simon couldn't continue because he's got other work commitments. But I carried it on, and I actually love doing it. I love meeting all the new social workers. I love making the friends. And the good thing is that you can be honest. We don't have any videos up on the website yet about it, but I'm hoping that the next one I can do at least a 15-minute one where we're just talking, because of course it can get very personal, so I can understand why parents and social workers don't want it on the internet, but hopefully we can give you a sample on the website soon. Regarding my own experience, there's so many local authorities that don't accept parent advocates and tell parents that they can't have anyone with them. I'm one of these that I will tell a parent that they can, and I will post it all online. I don't. The parent should know that they're allowed someone with them. And one parent I'm helping with, they refused me entrance to the meetings, and it took. And then I just turned up at court with a parent, and the judge said yes, it's fine for me to go in. And then the social worker was like, okay then. And that's how I got in to be with that parent that I'm supporting at the moment, that should never have had her children removed in the first place. Hers was a DV relationship, and we all know that DV relationships, children get taken even when a parent leaves the abuser, which is wrong. Shouldn't happen. Is there anything else, Simon, that I need to say if I missed anything?
No, Tommy, maybe because you're like me, one of life's optimists, what your hope is, what we can achieve with David here and with PFAN moving forwards.
I'm hoping that we can get, I mean, I've had the privilege of working with David for over 2 years with IPAN, so I know how much he is very committed to this work, and I think that's what we need. We need people that are committed, and I hope that we can get parent advocacy everywhere, and it is getting there. It's not as fast as some people want, but you can't expect that. Rome wasn't built in a day, so it's about the small steps, celebrating what you have done, talking about the negatives so you can learn from it, move on from it, and try not to make the same mistake again. But at the end of the day, everyone's a human being. Whether we're a parent, whether we're a social worker, we're all human beings. We've all got feelings, and we need to build relationships. We need to change the language. The language that's used in social work is not suitable for parents. It's not parent friendly. But admittedly, since my language campaign that I did 2 years ago kicked off, there was a load of local authorities that have actually changed the language already in their own local authorities, and their training of their own social workers. So that's another positive. It's not every local authority, but it's a start.
Thanks so much, Tammy. Some really good points. Firstly, on a personal level, you look really tired, so I hope you're okay and things at the hospital okay, as you're my buddy. I think your experiences, if you don't mind me saying, Tammy, show the importance of local authorities being, and you might want to add on this, David, of being mindful that parents who are going to become parent advocates may also have an awful lot of other crap still going on in their lives. So they may not be able to every single day turn up at 9 o'clock like Tammy at the hospital. I think that's missing from the system, and something that we become over professionalized. We might come back into that. The other thing, Deb, I don't know what I'm calling it, but the other thing, Tammy, that I feel so nourished when I'm part of PFAN, that you as parent advocates add, is that professional systems can be about love and care, and that's something that's really, really missing, and something that I think that parent advocates, and I'm sure both Tammy and Nikki offer, isn't it? That actually we've gone away from the language of love and care to the sort of language of good enough parenting, whatever the heck that means, where parent advocates come in and say, actually, you're a human being, I'm a human being. And I think that's something that social workers themselves can probably benefit from in the room as well, actually. Is Kevin there? I think there's a couple of other people to come to. Kevin, I think I can see your smiley face. Is that right? Was there anything you wanted to? Hey, out of the way, but at a moment where I thought you might not join us, I think you're still on mute. I think, Kevin. was there anything you wanted to add or comment from your perspective and your experiences?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I think, I'm really glad to hear, all the other speakers share their experiences because it's really, really important. I think I was a teenage father, so I was a ghost in the room for 3 years until a chair pulled me to the side and said, Dad, what do you want? Things are going really serious. What is your view on this? And this is when I quickly realized how unrealistic the plans were, and they weren't. They set mother for failure, and I had to intervene and challenge, some of the plans and reduce some of the way they were trying to organize some of the contacts and the way they were, making some of the plans because they didn't really think through some of the plans and because social work has this, this it's very mother focused, and they forget that families, it takes a village to raise a child, and families have fathers who have also families, and it's really important to remember that those two sides of the families can play a really important role to support the family, and that was how I was enabled to, go through a whole PLO process and identify the support that was available to me to then become a sole carer for my son and still rely on that support till this day. So I think when I look back, it's because I didn't have an advocate. It was a very mother focused meeting. Their attention were all on the mother. They weren't looking at father as a resource. They weren't considering what took place in the early days where they had parenting assessment where I was present, where my mother was cooking and I was playing with the baby. So all of that was out of the box, and for me, I think that was wrong. That was very wrong, and I think that's where social workers don't get it right, is where they put a very strong focus on mother and forget to have friendly conversations about support network, about how those other members of the families and fathers' families can play a role, because this is really, really important, because they know in their research, sometimes these children go back looking for those relationships. They really do go back looking for those relationships. I saw a movie called Joy, and it touched me about this Indian boy who was adopted and ended up going back to find out where his roots were and who what his families were. And I just think, wow, this really touches point on social work. And for me, that's the only thing I really wanted to add. And I'm glad to see how Parent Advocate has evolved and is happening, it's taking place in other local authority. There's still a lot more work to be done. And yeah, that's it really, to be honest.
Thanks so much, Kevin, and a great idea that fathers can become parent advocates as well, that David had kind of touched on. Before we go to questions and answers, I'm not sure if Talia's online or not, and whether, Talia, you wanted to add anything. I know that you're advocating for a number of young fathers up in Scotland. If you're not online, I'm obviously talking to a ghost, and we'll go to Q&A. But if you are, then it would be great to hear your very balanced perspective. If not, it's okay. So I know Talia, like Tammy, has an awful lot of hospital appointments, etc., to turn up to, so she may well have had to go for that. We can come back to Talia. Shall we start with questions in the room, and then we can come to questions on Zoom? I'm guessing, Diana, that if people want to ask questions on Zoom, we can go to them, or they can type the questions and you can ask them. But maybe to start in the room for questions from the audience, I suppose we call it. I feel like I'm on question time. Hopefully I'm not, and I don't want to be a politician. Any questions from the room? At the back.
Oh, yeah, Robert, I work at ATD. Thank you for the various contributions. Amazing and very complimentary. So got a question for David and then a question for Nikki and Tammy. So the question for David, I'll ask both of us, was the success in New York then replicated in other places? And for Nikki and Tammy, I'm just wondering, did you have any experience when there was yourselves, and I think we all agree with the early support, but sometimes you get to that stage of court cases, and then you have legal advocates and parent advocates. And I'm just wondering, did you ever have that experience of working with legal advocates, your role as parent advocates, and with parents, and what kind of relationship developed then? Did those relationships work? Were the challenges, or just anything around?
Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Come to you first, David.
That's a great question. What's been replicated is the peer-to-peer support. Lots of jurisdictions, lots of governments have taken the aspect of training a parent to be an advocate to help individuals. And that helps individuals, and some people get their children back more quickly, and some people don't have their children taken away, but it doesn't change systems. In New York, we did lots of things. We had peer-to-peer support, we had organizing, we changed culture. All that was done to create an environment of change, to change the culture and to institutionalize change. That has not been replicated. Different pieces have been replicated in other places. There are some very powerful individual parent advocacy organizations. There's California Families Rise, there's Movement for Family Power. There are lots of different groups across the country and across the world, but nobody else has yet done everything together. So other jurisdictions have not had the dramatic changes that New York has had. I did want to say one thing in response to what Tammy said, that we have to take small steps and do what we can. Absolutely. My experience is that change is slow until it's fast. It's like boiling water. It's very quiet and calm, and then all of a sudden it boils. And that's what happened in New York, and I think is going to be happening in a lot of places.
Thanks, David. It's a great question, buddy, isn't it? Because without that policy change,
Yeah.
then actually, you know, we've run the study groups recently here where we had lots of social workers that I'm writing up. And what was really heartening was all of the social workers who came here wanted to work in a different way. What was disheartening was all of them said, actually, the systems that I work within discourage that way of working. So it's really important that those organisations and policies change. Hopefully with the change of government from the evil Tories, we can have something slightly fairer, we'll see. Hello. Tammy and Nikki, so the question was around your experience perhaps of working with legal advocates, or I guess lawyers in court, and whether that's worked well or not.
I thought we went quite well. I mean, like, they was quite disgusted with the local authority that they wouldn't give them a travel card as well. Sorry?
No, I had a question.
Oh. And obviously I've just got an SGO for my granddaughter and her little sister, until they're 18. And I heard the legal bits in there, but I didn't really have much to do with, I was still just in the room talking, I was with the family properly. Yeah.
Tammy.
Yeah, I haven't had any legal like thingies at the moment in any of my cases, so I haven't had a chance yet.
I don't know if I meant to speak to the chair, but we, as PFAN, we with a number of other organisations wrote a report called The Way Forwards, and something that parents and organisations really wanted was independent legal representation. Something we have in the UK, David, is the same lawyer could represent the local authority in the morning in the same court, and then represent the parents in the afternoon. If you're a parent who's got the potential of having your child removed, that looks a bit fishy, doesn't it, fundamentally? And that's something that the Way Forwards really thought had to change so that they could work more effectively with parent advocates.
There's her hand up.
Oh, Tammy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that where I was saying that the social worker was not willing to have me involved with the mum, from the legal side, the solicitor's actually been really friendly. The solicitors encouraged me, encouraged I talked to a solicitor most of the time. She did say that they are only allowed to, with legal aid, they can actually only be with the parents for, I think it was 2 hours, she said, a week. But when you're talking to an advocate, the solicitor can actually talk to an advocate more than with a parent because they get paid for it. So even if you're a parent advocate, if they're talking with a parent advocate, they actually get paid for it, where they don't get paid, they only get paid 2 hours to talk to a parent. I don't know if that answers your question, Rob.
Thank you, Tommy. David, did you want to say anything? Because I know that you and Andy Bilson are very clear that needs to be good legal representation as well as parent advocacy. And it's only when the two come together, is that right, that real change can happen?
The lawyers made a tremendous difference. It's not just people are treated unfairly, they're treated unjustly, and you need legal representation. And that was one of the big changes that came about. A lawyer named Marty Guggenheim led this effort. It took 10 years to convince government that parents needed to have legal representation. And that was successful. What was not successful is there was a movement of parents trying to get the right to just tell parents what their legal rights are when you're being investigated, that you do not have to let the protective service worker in unless there's a court order for that, and there's rarely a court order. The Child Welfare Agency refused to let that happen. And the law, it's not to give parents more rights, just to tell them what their rights are.
Yeah.
It's still oppressive that way. What's interesting, whereas that law did not pass in New York State, in Texas, there was a coalition of very conservative legislators who didn't want government to intrude in people's lives, and the progressive social work community, they were able to pass legislation. Sometimes coalitions of left wing and right wing can make big difference.
That was interesting. Yeah, I read about that one. Did you have, oh,
There was another question.
did you have your hand up?
Yeah, you mentioned resources, and it sounds like resources are really important. And I'm just thinking about the current government, it doesn't change, and the squeeze that the local authorities are experiencing in terms of their money, and how you feel like that's influencing or not parent advocates, because they rightly so should be paid for their profession, their work. And it goes, there's other things on top of that, like supervision and support that if he wants to work for free rights, I mean, how does that kind of work in terms of, if there's no resources, do we then have no parent advocates, or do we expect them to work free without support?
I would like to say a few things. I don't think parent advocates should work for free. I think they're experts by experience. It's their time. Everybody else is being paid at a meeting. Parent advocates should be paid. One of the arguments we made to government is if you reduce the number of kids in care, you're saving lots of money.
Yeah.
And we developed an agreement that if you save money from kids not coming into care, some of that money that's saved should go to help families, to support families. They signed that agreement and they began to put more money into it. I think you can make that argument, you can document that helping families, keeping kids out of care will save government money, and then there'll be resources to pay parent advocates who do help reduce the number of kids coming into care. The other area where there was support was this foundation that provided catalytic seed money. That helps. It's not essential, but it does make a difference. And I think there's a fair amount of money available from foundations in the UK, from what I've heard, to support this kind of advocacy. Start small and show them it works, and then it'll expand.
I mean, PFAM, we're absolutely clear that parent advocates should be paid. That's not just about their living, but it's about respecting the room as well.
Yeah.
Research out there, David, in the UK is that a number of local authorities are bankrupting themselves through child protection care proceeding looked after population. So there are huge amounts of money being spent on late interventions. There's absolutely no reason why those shouldn't be spent on early interventions, including paying parent advocates. So I think it's easy for me to say, isn't it? Because if I was a senior manager, excuse my language, I don't want the crap to hit the fans. I probably might go late intervention, but actually the research is very clear. There are huge savings to be had that would cover the costs of parent advocates 100 times over, actually, if systems change towards early intervention. Hopefully with the Labour government, we can return to some community services where parent advocates could thrive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even the attendees of these case conferences, and I'm working for Lewisham, my name was never there. I had to put it right at the bottom and say parent advocate. So I'm thinking, do you know what I mean? I'm working for, so I didn't get, I got 15, I got some Tesco's vouchers, that's what I got. But I'm just thinking, it really discouraged me, not discouraged me, but I was just like, my name's not even there. And you're employing me to do this work and my name is not even there. So I had to just write it down.
It's dehumanizing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dealing with you as a human being.
Mhm.
A wonderful question, isn't it? Because I think it's a sort of thorny question that needs to be asked.
Service that I wish I support who have children from their care, and I'm a social worker by background as well.
I am as well.
But I think that it's short-sighted, isn't it? Because my service is always at risk because we support women. What we're saying is maybe there'd be less women for us to support if you put money here, but it's short-sighted and the local authorities are going, well, there's nothing to fine, there's nothing there. But I think we need to rethink that whole way of the equation and what I'm doing. Doing like all the things that new family now, it's like, well, we had that before and you got rid of it, and now we're having loads of money and pretending it's a new idea and it's not. And I think this is a wonderful idea, and we, how do we propel it to be bigger and for them to see money in here and it's going to save that.
I think it's a great point. I think at PFAM we need to be a bit braver about that. I won't bore you, but a bit of research I was trying to get done as an academic, and the government I was dealing with didn't listen until I said, you've got 7,000 kids in care. This is how much it costs a week. This is how many millions you're spending. Does that make sense? And then you could see the eyes in the room go, oh, and I think we're not, because a lot of us sort of on the left, do you know what I mean? We sometimes shy away from that, but I think you're right. That's something perhaps we could take back to PFAN to sort of put on the website a bit more about the potential. That's what policymakers are interested in, isn't it? Saving money fundamentally. It's really important that's, thank you for highlighting it. Other questions in the room? I will always take a question from you.
I am Lahen, I'm ATV activist. My question goes to Nikki and Tammy. I mean, listening to your experience is quite fascinating, and the amount of passion you put into it, you know, and as also a live experience parent is quite amazing. My question goes like this: if you are asked to tell me some help that parent, some direct or immediate help a parent that goes through issues social services needs, and also have that parent advocate needs, increasing the world, what would that be?
What was the sorry, what was the question? Sorry, what was that?
Yeah. You deal with parent issue, who are there like their voice or their help, their support. Yeah, if you are asked to give like in three words or in simple words, what are the immediate and direct help those parents need when they go through those type of issues?
Okay.
And you also as a parent advocate.
Okay. For your voice to be heard, the parent, for you to be an equal, so that you can, there's no hierarchy, and you know your child better than anybody. Okay, And you can have all these people saying to you, "Da, da, 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 da," but you know your child. And okay. You can make a change. And I also turn around and say, you know, like, all right, you've got social services involved, right? Well, and it's sometimes they're talking about poverty and things like this. Say, well, hold on. The social worker and the social services want you to do this, this, and this, right? I said, this is a two-way situation. All the time you've got social services involved, you've got to use them for what you can get. And you can turn around and say to them, I've got no beds. Go and get me some beds. So your children can sleep on beds. I say it's a two-way situation. If you need help, you tell them. Yeah.
Anything you wanted to add on terms of, what do parents need from you?
Well, parents just that parents need like support for me. They need support. They need like, they need like my voice, like their voice heard. I told my clients to speak for themselves and, just give me like, what they want their family to be like, after my service is gone. And be honest with social services, like be honest, like as much as you can. Like never lie to them. So that's what I always say to them as well. And I just support them with their own their decisions, and I just raise them the concerns if it comes up, like what they want me to raise them. So yeah.
Simon, can I just interrupt quickly?
I can come to you, Tammy.
I've got to go. What do you want me to say before I go?
What you think parents need from parent advocates?
What do parents need from parent advocacy? Support. A friendship. Relationships. To know that they're valued. I mean, at the end of the day, and you touched on it earlier, but parents are going through enough anyway, and they've got their own trauma for going through social services. So that can then do double PTSD. Something can trigger when they're helping another parent. Something can trigger. So they need someone they can call or go to who can talk and just be there to be their sounding board, because you need to be a sounding board because you get so angry at the system anyway when you see it happening to another parent. So from my point of view, it's having that support and that person or people that you can go to, even if it's just like setting up a group and being there for one another. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. So we should be going home in half an hour. So I need to, the consultant's due to come round any time. So I'm going to go.
Take care.
But it was great. David, I'm hoping to meet you in person. 3 years of working with you and not meeting you in person. I really am hoping I'm going to get to meet you in person while you're down. It was great to see you all, and I've got to go. So I'll take care, everyone.
God bless.
Great question, Lorraine. It's a shame Talia isn't there. I can't really speak for Talia, Lorraine, but I did speak to her yesterday. If Talia were here, and she may just interrupt me, so I'm totally wrong. I think from Talia's accounts, it's about not giving up. That's something that she always offers families, that actually she'll be there whatever. There's a kind of unconditional support that professional services just don't offer. And actually, even if it gets really, really bad, she will still be there. And that, I think, is fundamentally something missing from the system that Talia and I were speaking about yesterday. Shall we go to some questions? Were there questions on Zoom?
So there was, Laura Lavender put a question in the chat. Does she want to speak?
Laura Lavender. Did you want to share your question with us?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to think about the reunification of families, and is this just a standard practice that all social workers should be doing and advocating for for parents, and this is explored in all proceedings, so everybody's clear on what the expectations for parents if their children are being removed or thinking about being removed. What are the steps that the parents need to know about, and having open, clear conversations so everybody knows what to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. That's a wonderful point. David, did you want to, because I know in New York that the rates of reunification went up, is that fair to say? Did you want to say anything?
I think that is extremely important and not done enough. That is, there needs to be work with parents to be reunified with their children. It's an extremely difficult time when a reunification happens. There are lots of difficulties after a child has been separated. Not enough work and support goes into that. It has improved, but not anywhere near where it should be. New York has just established this policy where parent advocates will help reunify a family. Every agency has to have that. I recently spoke in Finland and Sweden. Once a child goes into care in those countries, almost never does the child come home. There's no social work support for that. They have lots of support for families, but once the separation happens, it's a terrible injustice. In the United States, there's also forced adoption. Parents lose their children and the children are adopted without the authorization of parents, without the approval of parents. It's a terrible injustice. There needs to be more effort on reunification. Social workers need to be trained to do that and to focus on it, and it's certainly not done enough. So I think your point is very well taken, Laura.
And we have forced adoption in the UK. That's a custom of practice as well. Tammy, and anything you wanted to add about reunification or children coming back to parents?
Yeah, I think that there should be a bit more support in like, you know, kids coming back to their parents and that, because like I've got my own like, you know, experiences and family members, and you know, it's unlawful removal as well. I think social workers like, you know, do like, you know, they use their power to use like the section 20 as well. Do you know what I mean? So when that section 20 gets presented to the parents, they're like, you have to push, you have to sign it, you have to sign it. Do you know what I mean? So they've got no choice. And then I think that all parents should be allowed to take that back as well. That instead of going to court proceedings. So if you do, like, you change your mind, you should be allowed to like change your mind and then to get your child back. You know what I mean? Why can't you get your child back? You know what I mean? So in that sense, like, I think that, you know, all parents and kids, they should be united, like if they want to come back. And I think they should have like, you know, more time with their parents as well if they are in the care system. Like, don't leave it like for 1 year, 2 years, and then they can see their kid. It's odd. It's odd. Them little kids can't see their mum, and that. How do you think they feel? I think this needs to change a lot. Yeah. So I've got like, you know, brothers and sisters in the care system, and I can't even see them myself because, you know, they don't know me. And so yeah,
It's really hard.
yeah, it is odd.
And then sort of section 20, you're talking about where parents, it's a voluntary
Yeah,
thing.
it's a voluntary, yeah,
parents
but when
sign.
social workers like, you know, try and force them to sign it, do you know what I mean? And
there are
you know,
other-
and they don't understand, you know, especially when parents don't have an advocate to say, you know, you don't have to sign it, or you don't get like legal representative, you know what I mean? So parents are like, oh yeah, let's sign it, do you know what I mean? So these things, it's, you know, it's a bit difficult for parents because they don't know what they're signing. So maybe that should be, you know, something that parents know in it, that, you know, they don't have to sign it, or, you know, get, you know, representative to, you know, to understand what that means, that section. I
In
think
the
so.
court, there's a lot of a number of high profile court cases where they've said that's illegal.
Yeah.
And they've come down quite hard on local
Yeah.
authorities for it not being voluntary. And maybe you're right, that's where a parent advocate can be very useful.
And
here
that
to
just
explain
like identify that, you know, you don't have to sign it, and if you have to sign it, then there's got to be a reason for you to sign it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's got to be your word over the social worker. So I think that should be raised quite a lot, you know what I mean? Because like I said, parents don't understand about different sections. You know what I mean? Like, you know, even doing like a section 47, they don't know what that means. We know, but they don't know. You know what I mean? It's only when it's put on them, like you're going child protection or you're doing this section, they don't know. You know what I mean?
It's an alien language,
It's,
isn't
it's
it?
alien language, yeah. Like when I was going through it, I was like, what is that? I was like, I was confused. I mean, but now, I mean, now I know, I'm like really like, you know, thinking with it. And then I tell my clients and I just like say, you know, section 47 is this, I explain to him or her, And then they're like, oh, so thank you. I'm so happy that you explained to me. No one's actually sat down and explained to me what this means. I mean, so it helps, you know, and maybe the social worker can explain to the parents a bit more about it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I think that will explore the parents as well to say, okay, this is what I'm going through. You know what I mean? This is what I can read up about, you know? Yeah.
Nikki, wonderful points. Thank you. Anything you wanted to add?
Not really, exactly the same. They just not, there's not enough time. I mean, like, especially if you've got parents with special needs.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, you've got special needs. This is like, because a lot of social workers have got red tape and they've got to do this, and this quick. Do you know what I mean? They need more time. You're right about the section 20, because like,
And I think it's aimed at, like, you know, disabled children and, you know, special children, you know, like it's decided, like it is mostly on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, in my family, that's what's happened with my family. So it was put on her that, like, you have to sign it. Otherwise, if you don't sign it, I'm going to take all your rest of your kids. And then that's what happened. So they took all our kids. So now they're all legally adopted out. I mean, so, because she didn't have a choice.
yeah.
She didn't have a choice, you know? And it is a shame, and she don't see her child no more. Yeah. No.
Without being rude, it's
Yeah.
beyond a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's destroying
Yeah,
people's
it's destroying
lives.
everyone, you know.
Yeah.
So she's got to relocate. She can't be around the area, and I mean, because her kids are around there. You know, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah.
And then my friend and colleague Andy Bilson is doing some research which has shown that the biggest spike in child protection has been with children with disabilities. So there's something
Yeah.
on there.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the child is in a good like home. You know what I mean? Like, you know, don't get me wrong, he's having a fantastic time, but it's still not the point for the mother. The mother's got to go through all that, you know, that anxiety, that you know, away from the child, and you know what I mean, and you know, all the other kids had to follow, you know. And then when they're little, they don't understand. You know what I mean, as young as this baby here, I mean, not knowing the better than mum, I mean, it's hard. And then when you do get a connection with your children, then social workers want to put like a problem. Oh, you can't see them, or your kids don't want to see you, or you know what I mean. You know, and then it's just just goes underneath the mat, you know.
No, stranger things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Just back to your point, Laura. So I was just going to say one thing that in PFAN and a bit of sort of research I'm doing, it's very clear that parents, particularly parents in poverty, talk about shifting sands with social workers. So actually, they're given one group of things to do to have their child reunified, but then that changes during the plan, and that's deeply unfair, and as you would say, unjust. Sorry, Dan. Please. Oh, I've got a terrible sight.
Susie Devitt says your hand up first.
Susie, please.
Hello, I don't know, can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm in the United States, I'm in Boston, and I'm part of ATD Fourth World as well. And I wanted to thank everybody there, because I'm hearing things again that we heard during a research project called the Family Advocacy Project, and our report will be coming out next week. And I can't give you the link yet, but it was a project that involved people from the UK, from Switzerland, Belgium, France, Poland, Spain, and the Netherlands. And all of the parents were people who deal with the Child Protective Services. Everyone there had either all of their children in foster care, some of them, or children adopted out. And in the room, Tammy's not in the room anymore. Tammy Mays, Patricia Bailey, Talia Drayak, Amanda Button, Lorraine, all took part. And we came up with a list of very concrete proposals, that some of which you're mentioning here. And of course, they're international, and each of the countries will go with the ones that are most appropriate for them. But some of the things that you've been saying here today, like what's put in a report, what's put in a family file, one of the recommendations that people want to run with is that parents should be able to co-write their files with social workers, so that first of all, they get their say, but secondly, a child at the age of 18 has the right to see their file. And in there, they should be able to see what the efforts the parents have made. what they tried to do for their children and what some of the obstacles, because it's so important for their own identity, as many of you have said. You know, who are you later on when you haven't been with your parents? There's also a big piece was to change the name of Child Protective Services, because parents said it makes it sound like our children are in danger from us. And why don't we call it family support or some other way, family and child support services, and work on that, which is, it's a big piece, because it means changing the narrative, changing the way the society and the institutions see the parents and also see their work. Very detailed kinds of things. In the UK, you've done a ton of training of social workers. And that's other countries haven't done that as much, and they're picking up on that and trying to see how they can do it. People are looking for support when their children are not with them, because it's traumatizing. And Tammy, who's sitting at the table there, I think you said, or maybe it was Nikki, how important it is that when your children are returned home, you're also looking for support. You're not looking for surveillance. You don't want people to be observing you. You want concrete support. So I'm not going to develop all of these. I'll say one more thing is, and it was a big piece for everybody, that when you have to go to family court about your children and their future, it's so important that the parents be able to speak first, because that colors everything. And if it's the social worker who may have only negative things to say, or the judge, you're destroyed. You don't know what to say anymore, and you don't feel like you can defend yourself. So this is a list that has to do with rights, parents' rights, and also recognition of what it means to live in poverty. As Tammy Mays wrote, poverty is not neglect, and we need to clarify those kinds of things. Anyway, the report is called Building a Future Without Poverty for Children, Parents and Society Together. And I wish I had the link today, but look for it. And the team there, Diana and company, and Pierre Klein, who's also on this call, will be able to get that to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susan. I'm sure that will go up on the ATD website. Sounds like a really important piece of work that you've all undertaken. Thank you. I'm mindful of time and I'm rubbish at time. Is there one more hand up? I can't see the name. I'm so sorry.
You want to unmute yourself?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Yeah, fascinating listening to everyone, especially personal experiences. I think some of these personal experiences are the ones that really drive change and advocacy. And by way of background, I'm not a social worker. My involvement in this space has entirely been on account of my own child and my efforts to be reunited per se. By way of background, I'm a media practitioner and I dabble in some amount of academia related to identity. My question is towards David. And you mentioned earlier on whilst you were speaking that there's been a significant amount, and I'm paraphrasing what you say, that there's been a significant amount of cultural change that occurred in New York for some of the changes to have taken place. Is there any amount of data or research or literature that's available online to look into? B is with regards to England, because that's where I'm at. Is there any kind of data on similar subject matter, such as, what are the cultural barometers, or the cultural transitions, or the cultural barriers even that people of color have had to navigate to, be with their children or address, for example, one of the most complicated, and I understand someone has mentioned earlier on that one of the most complicated avenues has obviously been the language factor. Some of these acronyms, section 20, 24, etc., like the acronyms are just completely alien, and it puts people from non-English speaking backgrounds as a complete disadvantage, or someone for that matter who's not really well versed in these terminologies. So is there any kind of work that's being done in this cultural landscape in this country? Those 2 points there. There's any literature in New York, and if there's any work that's being done in this country with regards to the same, culturally.
That's a terrific question, and first of all, the problem is just as severe as you described. That there's not enough cultural sensitivity. There aren't in the UK. I understand there's not sufficient translation interpreters to make sure that people understand what's being told to them and what their responsibilities are. In New York, we have many more translators, but it's still there's a lack of adequate cultural understanding of different cultures and different standards. In terms of the research in the UK, there's just beginning to be some research. A man named Clive Diaz has started to evaluate several of these parent advocacy programs and does describe some of the cultural barriers that exist. You can find his work online. Andy Bilson has also done some research that documents the problems. I think he does address some of the cultural barriers. I do want to say, though, that when I was at the Telford local authority on Monday, I was struck at how the culture has changed. People, when they began their parent advocacy work 5 years ago, somebody said that the parents sat at one table and the social worker sat at another table. Now everybody sits mixed together, and it was palpable. You could feel the difference in how people are relating to each other. Somebody had mentioned the importance of trust. There was beginning to be trust in relationships. It's a long, slow process, but in some local authorities, it is beginning to happen. So there's hope, but the problem you identify is absolutely correct.
David, I didn't have a lot to add. I think in terms of culture and different cultures, the UK research picture is very, very limited. I know Paul Bywaters and his team did some work on the different rates of children going into care by ethnic status, which showed a mixed picture. But I think you picked out an area that needs further research, is how I would put it. I'm mindful of time, Diana. Did we want to take one more question, or are we at the sort of time limit?
I think we're close to the time limit.
No problem.
Yeah, if maybe you all want to conclude here.
Nikki, was there any sort of final thoughts from you that you wanted to say?
No, I just thinking.
Nikki, Tammy, I'm so sorry.
Right. Yeah, just saying that, just enjoying parent advocacy and just want to make a change and, just do right by the parents, really.
Thank you. It's some wonderful work you're clearly doing. David, a couple of final thoughts from you?
That there is so much interest now in parent advocacy, I find inspiring. That there's 10 years ago in the UK, there was nothing. Parents had no voice, and now they're beginning to have a voice. Parents are on this panel. And it's not just here, but it's in many different local authorities. They're in Suffolk and Camden, and in Telford and many others. It's a new movement that's developing, and the more we nurture that, the better. And I'm very encouraged by what I've heard today and the support that there is out there.
Thanks, David. I guess from me, just to thank everyone, a little shout out, do come and join us at PFAN and try and move parent advocacy forwards in the UK. I'm guessing that report, Diana, that was referred to will be on the ATD website, which sounds like it will come out some really important stuff. Huge thanks to everyone for your patience, because it's been 2 hours and hopefully it's been of some use and informative for those who attended. Thank you.